Fantastic. So welcome everyone. This is the second session of How I Use GreyNoise. We're doing it in front of a live audience, which is really exciting. So it's nice to see all of your faces or pictures and names listed above for us. Yeah, you guys are in great company. We have an amazing team here with us today. So just some more background. My name is Supriya Mazumdar. I'm the community manager here at GreyNoise. I've been here for about 7 months now, which is insane because I feel like a total veteran. Long story short, this How I Use GreyNoise session started a few months ago. The idea is to spotlight GreyNoise users and how they use our product. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Paul and Grant to introduce themselves.
Sure. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Misner. I'm a SOC 3 analyst with Seculore. Our company provides 24/7 monitoring, detection, and cyber analysis for clients in over 25 states. We use proprietary technology that's patented and manufactured by us, and a team of dedicated analysts look at our data. Core focus for our company is 911 operations, and we're proud to play that part, keeping emergency assets safe.
Hi, everybody. My name is Grant Lorello, and I am one of the lead engineers here at Seculore. I've been working here for 5 years, and I helped design and create the original visualization tool that the SOC analysts use to do their analysis. And I help build the GreyNoise integration with our system.
Awesome. And so how long have you guys been at Seculore?
I've been here 2 years.
I've been here 5.5 years.
Awesome. And so how long have you been using GreyNoise? Tell us a little bit about kind of how you came across us, and then yeah, we can go from there.
Okay, sure. I'm actually the person who found GreyNoise when I was a SOC 2 analyst, and I found it organically. We were looking for a solution that did what GreyNoise did. We have a tool which is essentially a threat feed from multiple locations where we funnel IP addresses from our clients into to identify any types of vulnerabilities. When I first started, we had to manage or do research on these vulnerabilities one at a time, and it was very, very, very time consuming. So the next step was I found in research the GreyNoise page that allows for bulk uploads, and that using that process, I was able to save considerable time, probably about 8 hours a week using that. And it was really viral within our community, or within the community here. Other analysts looking over my shoulder were like, "What do you got? That looks really cool." They started using it, and pretty much everybody started using the tool here. So I talked to engineering about it, and we had a conversation, and then it basically became something that grew and integrated. We became a paid customer and started working with the product.
And I assume all good things, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you have a bad thing with GreyNoise, you're very responsive, right? So, you know, like every company that's got emerging technology, sometimes your technology gets ahead of the documentation, right? But the fact that you have a really great inside rep to help us through that type of thing has really covered that for us.
That's always great to hear. I'm sure, you know, we definitely like to put our customers and our favorite champions in the hot seat. So we always appreciate the kind words. And so I guess for background for folks that are joining us, what Paul and what Grant are going to be kind of going into like a deeper dive of is our primary use case, right? This is increasing SOC analyst efficiency. And you heard, you know, Paul kind of get into some of that, but the idea, right, is to use GreyNoise to enrich data sets so that analysts aren't spending 8 hours a day triaging like a single alert, are able to meet their SLA times, are able to turn over tickets quickly, efficiently, and free up for more like active threat hunting, right? Like it's a tough job. I'm sure you guys know that better than anyone else. Just how much burnout can come from being an analyst and being inundated with so much noise. So that being said, I'd love to talk a little bit more in depth about what a GreyNoise centric investigation looks like. Talk us through like the different integrations you have, or anything like a little bit more detailed like that. Of course, within. Yeah.
I'll lead on this, and then I'm going to pass it over to Grant, because I kind of stopped the story at the first third. Okay. Once we started talking to engineering, we started looking at your API, and we said this has a lot of potential for integration in our product. And then two things happened at the same time. We started using the product so much that we were probably a nuisance to you, and we felt it was time to pay for it. And we went through a budgetary process with your team, and at the same time we started testing integration in the API. And I'll let Grant speak to that one.
Yeah, so the API was very easy to work with. Our original implementation was a little bit, rough around the edges, as the initial API integrations tend to be, but it worked very well. And then after the project changed hands a little bit and it ended up in my lap, I ended up talking with your representative in order to help improve the integration process, and he was extraordinarily helpful. Streamlined the refactoring of the integration process significantly, and it's a lot faster. It's a lot more efficient now, and the entire project was very easy, and so much of that was due to the feedback that we got from our contacts at GreyNoise.
And I'll talk about the productivity. Like a rough rule of magnitude is for every 100 IPs that we were investigating prior to GreyNoise, we're probably investigating about 6 now. So it is an increased productivity, and actually gave our analysts more time to do an analysis on things they needed to do, so we could focus on what was necessary. And GreyNoise served the purpose that it was intended to, stripping out a lot of the noise.
And so I guess, were you guys surprised when you first, got GreyNoise integrated? Was that like expected? I guess I'd just love to know expectations versus reality of GreyNoise.
Yeah, so doing it manually, it was a combination of pulling things off of the website and then doing integrations with Excel and with a lot of macro support on the back end. And that was fantastic, but we were able to go so much further with the integration of the API, specifically with sharing information among different analysts for the same IPs.
Yeah, no, that totally tracks. And I guess of the type of like data that you're getting, like IP enrichment, was it the noise value, like the noise Boolean true or false, that was the most valuable? Was it the hash data? Like, I'm curious to know, like, I guess what was the most valuable, or what is the most valuable?
Good, number one, noise, removing that information. But there's also a significant amount of threat research in your feeds, and we often line that up against the threat information that we have gathered at Seculore to correlate and kind of triage. And most of the time we're in alignment. Sometimes we see some differences, and communicating that over the Slack channel with GreyNoise has been very helpful. We kind of view each other as partners. There's times I'll bring intel to them There's things that you wouldn't see, for example, like feeds that are signed up for by government sites. They have to be registered for. We see them because we have a lot of government clients. However, we want them taken out as false positives, and we work with GreyNoise to have the integration of those IPs in, for example.
Yeah, for sure. And do you guys utilize Riot at all?
Yeah, Raid is fantastic because it just takes out a whole, or I said Raid, Riot is great because it takes out a whole bunch of IPs quickly. That we realize that the thing about Riot is if you do a false positive on a Riot IP, it could be consequential to the availability of the customer site. So it's extremely helpful.
That's awesome. So I guess that being said, like with all that free time and fewer noise hitting your like similar, it's what is, I guess, the next step, or like what's the next level of maturity using GreyNoise or beyond it, or thinking ahead?
That's a great question. So the GreyNoise solved the problem for us with the noise and also with the sharing of data between the analysts. And Grant, do you want to talk about this, like the IP notes functionality? I'll take it if you.
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's more of a use case.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay. So the other side of that, and what we're trying to incorporate now, is once the analyst has looked at the data and made a determination on it, we have a gap in sharing that quickly among the other analysts. And we've just come out with the first iteration of the tool that does that. Once an analyst comments on a particular exchange, that comment gets put into our management console, and also in tools that the other engineers can look at and make a determination. A lot of time, these engineers are actually seeing the same IP on multiple sites that they manage, right? So if they're doing an analysis, they now have the ability to enter once and have all the other fields taken care of, all the other analysis fields taken care of in other sites. This is like the first iteration just came out, and it's proven really well. It's proven good enough that we're asking more questions and asking for more features. So that's an area of growth for us.
Yeah, extremely helpful. And so I'll even put you on the spot now. Is there something that you'd like to see from GreyNoise in the future? Is there more data that we can do, more transparency? Is there anything that you as a SOC team would really benefit from us?
To be honest with you, you have a really good set. Like the fact that you have people on the Slack channel, like involved with us to take care of things that are a little bit ambivalent, or there's a difference between both sides, or your team gathers some intel that we didn't know. In fact, a funny thing is we did some research on some scanners that we were looking at, and I actually reached out to the company to say, can you tell us a little bit more about the scanning? Turns out it was you. It was GreyNoise doing the scanning. So we had a little conversation about that. But what you're doing has been absolutely great, and I can't think of anything else right now that we need, but we will.
Grant, anything?
No, I can't think of anything. It was honestly so because I really just did the integration part of it. So I'm not so much of an end user as the mediator of letting the end users use the product. And it was so simple to use that I can't really think of anything that would improve upon the integration process.
Yeah, I just like the analysts are still using the manual tools. they're using them. If they have if we're seeing something really unusual at a specific customer that involves a lot of IPs. For example, we have one customer. All of a sudden, we're seeing a bunch of DNS from Tor nodes coming in, and it's like we want to quickly check what's going on at that. Probably doesn't make sense to throw it into the API, so we use the manual tools to do that.
And I don't know if you mentioned, but remind me. So you guys said SIM integration. Did you specify which one, or are you comfortable specifying?
No, that's fine. It's actually we have a proprietary tool that we use that has some of the features of SIM, some of the features of other security technologies, and that is proprietary patent our technology, and it is like offers a lot of functionality that you don't see in a typical SIM. But we don't sell it; we just resell the services.
Gotcha. And so, like, let's talk about volume. So, regardless of SIM tool, like, how many alerts do you guys see per day? Are you like processing? Like, how big is your team? Again, at your discretion, just like wanting to kind of give people an idea of scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started 2 years ago, our SOC team was 3.5 people. We had one part-time person on there, and our hours of operations were 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. Now we're 24/7. We have over 20 analysts working on the team. So there's been a lot of growth, and taking on the clients that cause us to scale has also resulted in the need for more efficiencies like GreyNoise. So that's a reason we incorporated it. We scan. So it's funny because I had just asked Grant's boss for this number yesterday about like how many transactions are going to ingress, but I don't have that number. But we have around 100 customers, and many of them have multiple versions of Paladin, our end appliance, and the sizes range from very closed networks that don't have a lot of public IP traffic, which if we do see something, it could be very, very, very important. Could take down a 911 center, so lives are at stake. And some of our other customers had like exposed or not exposed, or traffic on the internet that we're monitoring in front of, and usually those have a lot of IP traffic that's coming in and being analyzed.
So from a ratio perspective, and you'll have to forgive me, it's been a while since I sat in a SOC myself. How many of these specifically like that GreyNoise is helping with, how many of these are like tier 1 alerts versus like, how many of them are like GreyNoise hasn't seen this before, and maybe this is something you should actually worry about?
So that's a good question. We have in our alert system approximately 25,000 rules, and some of them are tailored specifically for the clients. Then, as part of that, I guess you might want to answer or ask a different question, right? It's like how much we don't have to deal with, because your tool helps us to like review a lot of, or take out a lot of things that we were escalating before. So that's that's where its strength is, and the whole lot. I mentioned with the checks before. We're doing about 4% or 6% of deep analysis that we were doing before.
Yeah, no, that's great to know, and frankly, that time save is extremely valuable, right? Because even if 1% of your attacks are, unknowns or targeted or non-opportunistic, if you're being gummed up by internet scanning, it's not valuable, or it's easy to miss. Any interesting attacks? Anything crazy or weird or quirky? Any fun stories?
I have one with a customer. We started seeing all this really unusual traffic going on, and it was coming over an unusual TCP port. And I called them up and I said, I'm doing some research on this, and I said, the only thing I can see is a game, right? It could be an Android thing or something going on. And he's like, yeah, that's my phone. So, but sometimes we've had, sometimes we'll see in a second that something's being compromised. And at one customer, it used to be pretty consistent when they were running a testing lab. So we would call up and see stuff. Another thing we recognized at a customer with your help was we had a device that just started spewing out all this UDP traffic, or getting an inbound UDP traffic. And a lot of it was malicious. And it turned out that without permission, somebody had put a router, like a home grade router, in a conference room where top level people met to have conversations. So we were able to quickly identify and resolve that.
Man. Great. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's no shortage of crazy things, especially from your client's perspective, which I'm sure is proprietary. But no, this is great. I think we've touched on a lot of like different topics, and we've highlighted a lot of the things that GreyNoise is capable of, which is integrating, reducing time and workload for analysts. I'd love to know what, I guess, like key takeaways. And again, if people have questions, you can drop them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. As we're moving towards like FAQ. I'm also going through my list of questions too. So I'd love to know if anyone has anything specific that they can ask either Grant or Paul. But yeah, I guess talking about success metrics, you've already told us that you went from like 100 IPs to 6, which is just insane numbers and really good from that perspective. But I guess speaking more like high level, like strategic, like what has this meant for like your organization, and like even speculating, like what do you think this means for Seculore?
So yeah, in a SOC, there's always a trade-off between productivity or not, getting the work done and doing quality work, right? Actually doing serious analysis on a customer site. And the quality of the work, this is great because it's helped both quality and production, right? The quality of the work that we do is better because of the product, right? And it's also sped up our production time, the ability to get out reports and things like that.
Absolutely. So we have quite a few audience questions, which I'm happy to get through. So the first one is we talked about like the core use case, right? But GreyNoise has a secondary use case, which is emerging threats and identifying emerging threats. So this is kind of geared towards this. So how about more manual research and emerging threats? Are you using it to track actively exploited vulnerabilities at your customers? It's a great place to talk about tag data if you guys are using that or not using that, and why not?
Okay, the answer is yes. So again, our tools do a lot of that prior to GreyNoise, right? Adding GreyNoise in provides us with additional verification and visibility into the attack. I do love the way you have the attacks organized on the website and the ability to search for them, because sometimes we'll just look and see, okay, general patterns on an attack that's happening among your client base. That's something that we really don't have the ability to capture in-house. So getting a general trend throughout the world is something that you do that we don't do.
That, yeah, totally tracks. And I guess from a enrichment perspective, and maybe Grant, you might be able to speak a little bit more about your like proprietary integration, but are you guys able to see that tag data enriched, or are you opting for visualizer use to go further into that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. Are you guys able to see tag data in your enrichment in your sim, or are you guys opting for visualizer, like the GreyNoise visualizer use to see like tag data?
So we do add the tag data to part of the integration. Much of the other metadata that hasn't been integrated fully into our sim quite yet. And so there is still, I'd say, pretty significant amount of, I have to ask Paul about that a bit more, of going to the visualizer to get a little bit more in-depth data on any particular hit. The majority of what the integration does is the GreyNoise noise true, where we just rules out a significant portion of hits that we would need to otherwise manually verify. So I guess this could kind of lead a little bit into just a little bit into the process. So our proprietary tool starts with just the hardware, which we build in-house and install on the client's network, which passively listens and gathers data. That data is then processed through a couple stages of metadata and then uploaded to our server in the cloud. And that's where it actually gets checked against our rule set and the GreyNoise integration. So after it matches and we see some hits, it will trigger an alert. And then we can cross-check that alert with a GreyNoise integration to see whether that was actually an alert worth looking into. And so it significantly reduces the amount of time that they actually spend digging into otherwise benign alerts. Yeah.
No, that's super helpful. And it seems like you touched on Brock's question a little bit about the setup. I guess I'll even ask the second part of this question. Any stumbling blocks that you had to work through? You mentioned working with Brad. Brad is our integration specialist at GreyNoise. He is a wizard and has set up all of the, we have 20 plus integrations with TIP, SIM, SOAR tools, open source tools. Yeah, that's just a plug for Brad. He's awesome. But
every tool, like open source tool that I see, it's like GreyNoise API. It's just fantastic. We love
the goal
that.
is to be everywhere. Yeah, but I guess getting back to originally Brock's question, any stumbling blocks, any troubleshooting that needed to happen? Yeah.
There weren't too many stumbling blocks. Obviously, there was just the standard ones that you run into in any sort of development process. I guess the largest one was just an initial misunderstanding on our part of how to best use your API. That stemmed primarily from just really just misreading of documentation, as well as a little bit, there was that brief period of time where the documentation, I think Paul already touched on this a little bit, the documentation was a little bit behind the live version of the API, but you guys solved that in like 5 minutes talking with Brad. We figured that out really quickly, and he even gave me kind of a preview of what the documentation was going to look like before it actually went live. So it was a very smooth and relatively painless integration process.
I'd like to answer the same question from the business side. Mm-hmm. If one of the things that I'm strongly going to recommend is you coordinate your testing process with sales rep. As far as dealing with things like API keys, key limits, expirations. We had to go back to a well a couple times because we had to, because the API key ran out. we had other projects going on, and this had to stall for a little bit. So, we're stalling the project, get back to it. API's expired, right? So, coordinating that with your sales rep is important. And to help the sales rep, I'll tell you, begin the internal sales process while you're testing, because it's going to take some cycles to get approval through management. This particular project went relatively fast for us because we could qualify and quantify what the product was giving us. But it's important that you begin that process to, one, get like a tentative go ahead from management to say, spend the time to investigate API incorporation. And two, when you've completed it, that there's a PO cut for to continue.
Paul, here's a tough question. How did you quantify that value? Like, how did you make that internal case?
I think when they saw me doing, well, the first thing was when I was doing 40 hours worth of work in 32. Right, that meant one of two things, right? I could do more analysis, or they could hand me more reports. And I was blessed that the former is what happened. I was able to do more quality analysis, and then it spread through the team, and this just became more than something that was desired, something that was felt to be necessary for our team, right? So it was a very sneaky process on their part, but you slowly got your claws into this organization to the point where we couldn't pull you away.
We love to hear that. No, this is great. And for the audience questions, we're happy to keep answering them. Otherwise, I'll just kind of like leave it open for final thoughts. And if folks want to stay on after we stop recording, I'm happy to answer questions specifically about GreyNoise, speak like in much greater detail about SIM, SOAR integrations, that type of stuff. But yeah, so any final questions from the audience? But meanwhile, Grant and Paul, I'll kind of ask you for final thoughts.
We're here. This is not like a paid endorsement or anything. We've really enjoyed working with your team. Hate it when the API shuts down. That's not a good thing. When you change your licensing, that is a little problem for us, but it actually served to move things a little bit here. But the relationship has been great. It's been productive, and I look forward to continuing it.
Yeah, from my perspective, so we're not fully integrated into every single aspect of the GreyNoise isn't that it's fully integrated in every single aspect of what we do. And what I find myself, just as a kind of engineer brain going through, is I get very excited about what new things that I could use the integration to do. Like, how can I better represent the data that we're seeing through the lens of GreyNoise's extra tags and all those paths and all the other information that is provided through the integration. And I'm very much looking forward to progressing that integration fully into more parts of the system.
Yep, that's awesome. And there is no shortage of integrations coming our way. In fact, we are pontificating over ServiceNow integration. I don't know if that's something that you guys use or if anyone here uses, but we're actually right now soliciting feedback for what a ServiceNow integration would look like. So if you have strong opinions or any thoughts on that at all, we'd really appreciate you reaching out to me. But fantastic. Well, we can go ahead and wrap up the recording. Again, we can stay on after, but again, to those watching the recording, My name is Supriya. This has been the Seculore session of how I use GreyNoise. If you are interested in doing your own session, you can reach out to me at community@greynoise.io. Yeah, stay tuned for more sessions.